Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Brian Dorries. I'm the Artistic Director of Theater of War Productions. We're so glad you could be here for the second installment of our new long-form journalism series here at the Greene Space, presented by WNYC, made possible by the generous support of the Laurie M. Tisch Illumination Fund. Theater of War Productions, as for those of you who don't know us, is a social impact company. We're based in New York. We've been around for over 18 years. We have more than 40 projects that address pressing issues of public health and social justice through the format you're going to experience here. But what's different about tonight is, one, this is a live recording for a radio program that'll run next week. So you're collaborators with us in this radio drama that we're going to create together. And two, we're bringing people in from all over the world also on Zoom who are participating and watching on their personal devices, thanks to my colleague Marjolaine Goldsmith, who made our work on Zoom possible at the beginning of the pandemic. I just want to acknowledge that we have some amazing partners here. The WNYC, of course, The Atlantic, our partner for tonight, which gave us the article by Rebecca Johns, who's the author of the piece tonight we're going to read. We're so delighted to have Rebecca here with us. The idea behind this show is really simple. We believe that actors reading a piece from an amazing magazine like The Atlantic have a role to play in helping us to bring ourselves into contact with the emotions we should be feeling all the time, but we cut ourselves off from for all kinds of adaptive reasons. And even the emotions we should be feeling when we're reading something on the page, that there's something really powerful about the affective experience of an actor reading a piece. And tonight we have an amazing actor, Hope Davis, who's joined us to perform for you tonight. Hope is going to be performing an article that was written by Rebecca Johns for The Atlantic, called A Diet Writer's Regrets. And we're going to use that reading as a jumping off point for a conversation with you, our audience, tonight. Theater of War Productions' work is always focused on creating the conditions for dialogue that wouldn't have happened had we not performed. And of course, in our model, the discussion lasts much longer than the performance. Hope's reading will take about 15 minutes, and then as soon as she's done, I'm going to come back out with mic runners, and I'm going to ask you a handful of questions, and we'll have people in the room answer those questions from their hearts and their guts to what they heard that resonated with them in the room. And then we'll hear from people all over the country and the world who are tuning in. And we'll try to raise the consciousness and the understanding. We'll try to sit with contradiction and complexity. We're not coming here to tie a bow on this conversation or check a box. We're just coming here to hold space together, to ask and answer questions together, to hear each other's perspectives, and to honor each other's interpretations. And there's an interpretation for every person in this room that should be honored, even if we don't agree with each other's interpretations. And so that's the idea behind what we're going to do. Hope's going to read the piece. As soon as she's done, I'm going to come out and ask you questions, and we'll get to the most critical and important part, our audience discussion, where we'll hear from you. I think I've covered everything in my script, so I'm going to turn things over to Hope Davis and her reading of Rebecca Johns' remarkable piece, A Diet Writer's Regrets.
My first byline in a national magazine appeared in the August 8, 1995 issue of Woman's Day under the headline, "What's Sabotaging Your Diet?" Woman's Day, that bastion of the checkout line, was known for unironic covers featuring decadent desserts under headlines about healthy eating. This particular issue's cover featured the title of my article over a photo of a chocolate cake frosted to look like a sunflower. I was 23, newly married, living in a studio in Brooklyn and making $18,000 a year. I'd been an editorial assistant at the magazine for 8 months and was eager for my first story. When the features editor said she needed a writer for a diet piece, I stuck my hand in the air. Almost as much as the byline, though, I wanted the advice. I was just under 200 pounds at the time and anxious to avoid crossing that dietary Rubicon. For the story, I talked with doctors and dietitians and got their best tips on staving off cravings, eating healthy, and keeping the number on the scale from creeping up any further than it had already. None of it helped. For years, magazines assigned me similar stories while I continued to gain weight. In the 90s and early 2000s, women's magazines wanted as much diet content as they could print. For me, that meant an extra source of income to supplement my meager pay, not to mention a career boost for an ambitious young writer. My byline appeared under such headlines as "Prime Time for Pig-Outs" in fitness and "Facing Fat in Self." I wrote so many diet and nutrition articles that I was even hired as an editor at the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, of all places, writing more scientific fairs such as "From Aspartame to Xenical" and "Type 2 Diabetes in Children Rises." At the same time, undone by emotional eating and stress, I gained an additional 30 pounds. No one has ever known so much about healthy eating and been less successful at following her own advice. For more than 3 decades, I fought a losing battle with weight gain. At its worst, in March 2017, my weight hit 298 pounds, a number I can't believe I'm writing down for all the world to see. At 5'8", I now had a BMI of 45. Obese. I've never admitted my exact weight to anyone other than my doctor. Even my husband didn't know. Still, no one but me was fooled. I lived under the delusion that if I never told anyone, the number would not exist. I know what the world thinks of fat people. I've endured the way people eye my cart at the grocery store, how they watch what I order in restaurants. People never stop asking me if I've tried this or that latest dieting fad. The answer always is yes. I went through the low-fat craze, the low-sugar craze, the low-carb craze. I swore off eating after 7 p.m. I fasted intermittently. I tried Herbalife, Slim Fast, Seattle Sutton, Nutrisystem, Weight Watchers, even a doctor-supervised weight clinic with expensive pills and powders. I joined gyms. I signed up for a couch to 5K race. I bought a bike, bought a yoga mat, bought an elliptical trainer. Nothing worked. I would put in weeks or months of teeth-grinding work, starving myself, and exercising to lose 20 or 25 pounds, and then watch it come back on a couple of months later. Then, in September 2023, my doctor handed me a prescription for Mounjaro, a diabetes drug that, when used off-label, has been found to help patients lose weight. Mounjaro, like Ozempic, Wegovy, and others, mimics the hormone GLP-1, which works to suppress appetite. Since I began taking the drug, I've lost almost 80 pounds with very little effort. Medical science has done what no diet and exercise plan ever could, changing my entire relationship with what I eat and when and why. I didn't grow up fat, but I did learn how to diet at a young age, probably much too young. I was 9 or 10 the first time I restricted my meals, usually skipping breakfast, sometimes lunch too. I was an average weight, so no one suggested it to me. I just did it. I liked the ascetic feeling of missing a meal, that tightness in the gut. At 12 and 13, I would exercise to the VHS tape of 20-minute workout with my mother and my sisters. It was just something everyone did, part of learning to be an adult. In high school, I learned to cook. My mother would often leave instructions so dinner would be hot when she got home from work. spaghetti and salad, grilled chicken and roast veggies, tacos. Usually the only indulgence in our house was my mother's unappetizing low-fat ice cream. It was easy to eat healthy when few of the food decisions were up to me. My senior year of high school, I weighed 132 pounds and wore a size 10. I didn't think much about food because I didn't have to. But unlike some friends I know who don't care at all what they eat or who treat meals like brushing their teeth, a necessary form of self-maintenance that doesn't require much attention or result in much pleasure, I've always enjoyed food. I like the crunch of sunflower seeds on my salad, the melt of cheese on a burger. When I was in college, I took a part-time job at McDonald's. I could walk there, and hey, meals were included. The freshman 15 suddenly turned into 30. I took a weightlifting course and swam laps and bought a bike. I quit my fast food gig for a part-time office job. Though the weight gain slowed, it never stopped. Throughout my 20s and 30s, I gained 5 to 10 pounds a year, a result not of frequent pig outs, but of small, daily failures. That one extra piece of pizza, a couple of Oreos after dinner, a slice of the office birthday cake. If I skipped breakfast, I would be ravenous by 11 with shaking hands and a foggy brain and no self-control. The author of What's Sabotaging Your Diet knew that missing breakfast was a problem. But if I was in a hurry to get out the door, sometimes I did just that. One of my worst triggers was bedtime. I can't count the number of nights I lay in bed unable to sleep from hunger until I gave in and had a piece of toast with a little peanut butter. The author of Prime Time for Pig Outs knew that eating late at night was bad, but I could either eat something or suffer from insomnia. Stress could also trigger emotional eating. That job at the Journal, it turned nightmarish when new management took over, fired the beloved editors I'd worked for, and put me in temporary charge of publishing the entire journal with a depleted staff. I was up at 6:30 a.m. and in bed at midnight with no time in between for exercise or cooking, shoveling food in like a zombie between meetings. By the time I quit that job, I was 245 pounds and I was miserable. I'd been interviewing experts and publishing diet and nutrition advice for almost a decade, and for just as long, I'd been failing to make any of it work for me. I felt like the world's biggest hypocrite. I started to think, maybe this is it. Maybe I'm just going to be fat forever, and there's nothing I can do about it. Diet is a word that now seems old-fashioned, like the wine and egg plan from Vogue that sometimes still circulates on social media, a holdover from a bygone era along with pantyhose and memorizing phone numbers. Today, we talk about healthy lifestyles, mindful eating, about getting fit and taking care of our bodies. Or we reject weight loss as a goal altogether, embracing body positivity, fat acceptance, health at any size. Dieting is out and self-love is in. Except that it isn't. Not even close. Those old women's magazines are gone, for the most part, victims of a changing media landscape. But on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and everywhere else, people are still looking for solutions. Give me something that works, they say, please. For years, I wasn't writing the diet articles just for readers. I was writing them for myself. I was both a cog in the toxic diet media complex and its reason for existence. Each time, I would hold out hope that the next recommendation would unlock my weight loss success. I couldn't blame the magazines or their readers for wanting it too, the one bit of advice that would work for them, that would finally make a difference. I would try and fail and try again. And I was getting very tired of failure. The first time my doctor mentioned bariatric surgery, I was desperate enough to consider it. I learned that in addition to losing part of my stomach, I would need to stick to a liquid diet both before and after surgery, and that some people experience severe side effects. Because losing body parts seemed a bridge too far, even for me, I tried healthy at any size acceptance instead, which was fine. Until it wasn't. Last year, at my annual checkup, my doctor told me that I was at risk for diabetes. As he poked at my toes, checking for gangrene, I decided I no longer had room for delusions. A friend had been telling me about Wegovy and the difference it was making for her, so I asked my doctor if he could give me a prescription. His relief was palpable. Why, he wondered, had I waited so long? The first few days on Mounjaro, I felt mildly off, slightly queasy, like I might be coming down with the flu. Then, as my body adjusted, hunger returned, but not urgently. I would get full faster, sometimes after only a bite or two. Rich and heavy foods no longer sounded appealing. Gradually, the effects would lessen, and then my doctor would up my dosage. The cycle repeated. All of a sudden, all the things I'd learned from writing those tips and tricks articles actually started to work. Cut back on carbs. Done. Eat lots of protein and veggies. A pleasure. No snacking after dinner. Easy. The real change, though, it happened in my head. Thoughts of food, the background noise of my life for decades, were gone. I no longer had to white-knuckle my way through the day to lose weight. At a recent work event, a friend asked what we should do about lunch. Lunch, I said. I didn't even think about lunch. To say that this is a revelation is an understatement. It's as though I woke up not in someone else's body, but in someone else's brain. It's like a reset, a return to the way I felt when I was younger and could ignore food when I chose to, when it didn't matter to me if I skipped an occasional meal. I don't get shaky and foggy if I miss breakfast or if I'm too busy for lunch. I feel instead a profound sense of freedom. Apparently, this is the real effect of the drug. Scientists thought that GLP-1 would work on the human gut, but it actually works best on the human brain, as previously reported in The Atlantic. A friend who told me about using Wegovy checks in with me regularly to share her own success, and she reports similar mental changes. This must be what skinny women feel like all the time, we say, and marvel that such a thing is possible. When I reached the 50-pound weight loss mark almost a year ago, a number so unreal that I almost thought I'd hallucinated it, I had my husband take a picture of me in the same blue and white sundress I'd worn in a similar photo 2 years earlier when I was near my top weight. It made for the classic after picture in which the changes to my body were now completely clear. My face and belly were thinner. My bust was smaller. I hadn't hallucinated anything. Nervously, I posted the photos to my Facebook and Instagram accounts along with the announcement of my milestone weight loss. I felt vulnerable, letting people in my life see that before and after comparison. But I've decided to open up about everything, to stop trying to fool myself by hiding. What was really sabotaging my diet all those years was the idea that if I kept pretending, I could be happier at my higher weight. I was not. The congratulations started pouring in. "Oh my God, you look great. Keep up the good work. Congratulations." And then they would message me privately, "How did you do it?" Maybe those people thought I'd be ashamed to admit that I used Mounjaro, but I'm not. Given my long history as a diet tips pusher, dispensing all that pithy advice, I figure the least I can do now is be honest about the one thing that's actually worked. I am no longer at risk of diabetes. 10 of the 80 pounds I've lost, I did myself by cutting down on carbs and upping my protein intake. The other 70 were Mounjaro. My doctor asked me at my last visit whether I still found pleasure in food. Some of his other patients on the drug have told him that they're sad to have lost the intensity of their joy in eating. I still love a good melty cheeseburger, even if I don't eat the whole thing anymore. I still love the crunch of sunflower seeds on my salad, even if I don't drown it in dressing. I have at least another 20 pounds to lose to get to my target weight, but it's unclear how long I can stay on Mounjaro. My insurer has approved my prescription through this month, March 2025. After that, only some of my doses will be covered. If I lose all the weight, my doctor has cautioned me, the company may cut me off entirely. I'm not sure what would happen then. Many people who go off GLP-1 medications report regaining the weight. My husband has said that we might be able to scrape together enough money to pay out of pocket, but with our daughter getting ready to apply to college soon, that might not be realistic. The only thing I know for certain is that gaining the weight back is not an option for me. For my health, for my family, I'd have no choice but to go back to white-knuckling it through the day, relying on the tips and tricks that were never enough. And that scares me.
Thank you so much, Hope. Hope Davis, everyone. Hope's gonna take a seat in the audience. Thank you so much, Hope. I really appreciate it. Thank you again to Rebecca for writing this piece. So when Rebecca first wrote this piece, after talking to her after rehearsal today, it's clear that she never imagined that it would ever be performed in front of an audience, much less by Hope Davis, here in the epicenter of the universe at 44 Charlton Street in New York City at the Greene space, WNYC. But here we are, having this conversation based on this thing that Rebecca put out into the world. Rebecca took a huge risk in writing this. She was very vulnerable. She put forth her own professional reputation on the line to be open and honest, as she said in the piece, about not being able to follow the advice that she had proffered in the magazines for which she wrote. And so in the spirit of candor, in the spirit of having an open conversation, we're going to turn to you. And I just want to ask the question that we ask all audiences, which is, as you listen to this, theater is about what happens in the present moment, as you're listening to this on Zoom or in this space here tonight. What resonated with you? What touched you as you heard this piece? What spoke to you in Rebecca's story as told and performed by Hope Davis? What was true? I'll come over to you. Yeah, right ahead. Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. So I want to thank you, Rebecca, for your vulnerability. I feel like I related, and thank you, Hannah, too, Hope as well, for reading it. It was really beautiful. So you said something that really resonated with me around small daily failures, that every day, like you would stress eat and emotionally eating from your career, and I resonated with that as well. I was on a project, and a few summers ago, I gained a lot of weight. My highest weight was around 350 pounds at one point previously as well. And I didn't notice that I was gaining that much weight until people started coming to me I feel like you're losing yourself, Unique. And I lost all that weight, and I went down to 160 pounds. But a few summers ago, I went up to about 200 pounds. And I tried Ozempic, and I did Ozempic with one of my close friends. And it was really helpful to me. I think my relationship with food, because I present as an extrovert, but I'm an introvert, at heart, me and food have a unique relationship. I love restaurants, I like eating, I like soul food, I like everything food. I bond over food. I always got food in my book bag. So Ozempic too kind of helped me deviate away from food a lot more and get comfortable with you don't need to always have something in your mouth. You don't always need that crunch. I read when she was reading, I heard the crunch when you like granola and all those little things that kind of help you pass time. So I would crunch on chips, or I'll crunch on cereal, just something, granola. But I think with Ozempic, it helped me too with kind of scaling back and getting to that goal weight, getting comfortable in the skin I'm in again. And I think alone, if I was just working, still stressed out as I was, I wouldn't have been able to cut back just solely let me try this diet. So I do appreciate you for your vulnerability, and I know that it worked for me as well. So it was nice hearing it, and I'm really going to share this article with my community, because I know the more people that's comfortable with hearing the truth and that's struggling with losing weight or their weight, it will be impactful for them.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being first. I really appreciate that. I like that you said your name was unique and you had a unique relationship to food, but that taking Ozempic changed that relationship. But it sounds like for the better, and I'm really grateful that you brought your perspective immediately after hearing the story into the room. I'm going to go over here to the next person. Yeah, right over here.
Hi, my name is Juan. I was listening to the story, and I was rooting for you the entire time. I felt all the emotional highs and lows, and it was really impactful to listen to. But I was waiting, and it hit at the end. It was that what happens when you finish? What happens when you stop? And that's my concern. My concern with the use of medication for the sake of acquiring weight loss is sustainability. It's how do we make sure that we psychologically, physically, emotionally are going to be able to keep ourselves holistically healthy in every possible way, And I think that as a society, we all have it's an issue. It's an issue as far as how do we take care of ourselves? How do we hold space for each other? How do we make sure that we don't cycle back, especially with the possibility of weight gain coming back in? It's a big concern of mine, when it comes to anybody asking. I work in the health and wellness field myself. I've been a personal trainer for 20 years, and I've dealt with people who have gone through bariatric surgery, and they've had a really significant weight loss, but they've also had a lot of health complications as a result of it. I had one client who had 17 tumors in her thyroid and had to be removed. And it was this staggering thing that I just saw this woman really fight for her life. So I'm grateful that you didn't have to go through that route and that you didn't make that decision. But I still come from that place of, just concern, human concern, So I wish everybody who decides to use it or has used it, I just wish you blessings and a lot of good fortune when it comes to the use of the product. I just want us to find another way that is not just solely dependent on the medication, if that's possible. So,
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Juan, for being second. I really appreciate it. Powerful to hear from someone whose experience sort of mirrors the experience in the story and who can resonate with it. And it's powerful to hear from a personal trainer who says, I have concerns about the sustainability of this solution. A really powerful thing to bring into the room, an important question that we should be interrogating and asking. There's a hand over here. I don't know where my mic runner is. Yeah, there he is. Right to you, sir.
So thank you, Hope, for reading Rebecca's story. Two words came to mind when I thought about this. The first one was let me tell you where I come from first. I'm a physician. I've been treating people with weight problems for 18 years full time. I currently represent the Hims and Hers company. We do telemedicine, so it gets it out to people. That's not why. The two words, one was hiding. Rebecca talked about hiding it from her husband, her weight. People tell me all the time in pictures, I want to hide behind someone because I don't want to see the way I look. This is not a medical condition we can hide from. We carry it on the outside, and people see it day after day after day. It's not like if you have cancer, if you have blood pressure problems, nobody sees that. They can't come up to you and make a comment, positive or negative. The second word that came to mind was hope. How many diets did she have to go through before she found the thing? This was not a knowledge deficit. Obesity is not a problem with not knowing what to do. It's a problem with our brains telling us we're full or we're not full. And you put it together in a comprehensive piece. So that's a medication, it's exercise, it's changing your diet, it's learning about all the things you do in social situations and not. But the time and time she had to continually fight and feel hurt because it didn't work this time. It's not a knowledge. This is in our brains. And these medicines that we now have are revolutionary for that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Great to have a physician's perspective. Before we go out, I see we've lit up the board out in the room, and I appreciate that here at the Green Space. But we're going to go to some of our folks on Zoom next. I think first up on Zoom is Durance. Durance, would you mind unmuting yourself? What resonated with you? What touched you in the reading? What was true?
So for me, I have been dealing with weight struggle all my life. And not only has it been me, but it's been my family as well. Like my mom, she was on Ozempic for about maybe 4 months. And then she had to get off of it because it really affected her. She had to have her gallbladder removed last June, in fact. So while she's doing Ozempic, I'm busy doing Trulicity. And for a moment, I stopped using it because I was afraid. But after I went and talked to my doctor about it and about everything that happened with my mom, my doctor told me that I should be okay and to just keep monitoring, my health, whatever issues come up, all of that. So I have been on Trulicity actually since 2022. But since 2017, I've been on a serious weight journey. I have gone, and I'll say the numbers, because of how long I've been working on it, I've taken my time, and I have gone from 360 to 278. So because of that, I have learned more about self-love, and because of the self-love that I have now, I want to keep working on the weight. So because of that, I keep doing Trulicity. I do yoga. I'm going back to working out at the gym. And it's because I have discovered self-love, not just loving and appreciating who I am, because I do, but I also want to improve on who I am internally and externally.
Thank you so much, Durance. Thank you. Really appreciate hearing your perspective and your story. Glenn, can you hear us? You're next. What resonated with you? What spoke to you tonight?
Well, I like the other speaker, have had a long battle with weight. I am a type 2 diabetic for the last dozen years or so. About 5 years ago, my endocrinologist just offhandedly said, "You ought to try Ozempic." And I was all ears, I was all in. So I got my prescription, began taking the shots, and almost immediately I had a reaction that I was lightheaded, dizzy. Anytime I stood up, I felt like I was going to pass out. I told the doctor this, and they just said, "Oh, don't worry about that. That your body's going to get used to this." So I went along another 4 or 5 weeks, and I woke up one morning in a 30-degree apartment on the floor in my bathroom. I had passed out. Don't even remember going to the bathroom, but I had passed out. I had broken my shoulder. I could not move. I had to wiggle myself into my bedroom to knock my phone off a bedside table to call EMS. And within 10 hours, sitting in a hospital on a gurney, a kidney doctor who I'd never met before came in and said, "Your kidneys have failed. You're going to be on dialysis for the rest of your life. Expect to do dialysis 3 times a week." Now, there's a bright thing about the story in that I, about 8 weeks into dialysis, my kidneys started functioning again. So after hearing this story and knowing how many people these drugs have helped, I just want people to be real cautionary in knowing what their body's doing when they're taking them, and talk back to your doctor. I wish I would have told my doctor, hell no. It's not natural that you feel like you're going to pass out every time you stand up. Because, my result was kidney failure and what I thought was going to be a lifetime of dialysis.
Thank you so much, Glenn. I really appreciate that. Thank you for being with us. It's no small thing to respond so candidly to this question. There's a stigma around weight and talking about one's weight in our country, in our world. It's a stigma that Rebecca in her story addressed and took the risk of speaking openly and honestly about. And so another variation on the first question that I asked earlier is simply, and you can ignore this and answer it however you'd like, because I saw a bunch of hands up earlier, but in light of that stigma, there are the people in the room, like some of the ones who've already spoken so far, who've also struggled with their weight, faced the stigma, have tried various things, and are willing to speak to it. And did something in the story that was read tonight resonate with you? Ryan, there's a hand right here. Yeah, thank you. Sir.
Well, there's the stigma of overweight, and there's the stigma of taking medication
Yes,
to deal with
two
it.
stigmas, yeah.
And pick your adventure.
Yeah.
What resonated with me in the story was pretty much everything. The story, the journey was essentially the same. I came to this through cardiology. My blood pressure was high, my cholesterol was high, and when I started really taking food intake seriously, I came to the conclusion that the food industry was out to kill me. And what I was suffering from was some sort of form of addiction. You can't go without food. And the change when I went onto Zepatide, on Zepbound 9 months ago, was not so much, as the story says, a change in my desire. It was a change in the food, a change in what I was eating, but the change in the desire. It helped fight the addiction. It helped me stop focusing on what I was going to eat. Now, I'm still way too focused on the next meal, but that's just me. I mean, I get up in the morning, so well, I have my routine for breakfast. What am I going to have for lunch? Well, maybe I'm hungry, maybe I'm not. But I'm always thinking about food, but I'm always thinking about less food. I'm not trying to plan out my life around food. And there's one other thing I want to address, the question of what happens when you can't get the medication anymore.
Yeah.
Not knowing where your journey is going to end is no reason to not start it. Am I going to be able to get these meds in 2 years? Maybe. Is there going to be another medication following it because there are more and better and cheaper in the pipeline? Probably. Mm. Is that a reason to not go on and do this? Hell no. Being mindful of the side effects, being mindful that this isn't for everyone, being mindful of everything that can go wrong. You already know what's going wrong. take the step.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. There's a hand back there. Yeah, someone here, and then we'll go right back there. Yeah, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Dr. Goldman, a psychologist and also an advisor to Roe. So first, Rebecca, I just want to thank you and everybody this evening who's sharing your own personal stories. What I hear every day from my clients is so similar to what all of you are sharing and experiencing. And what I've noticed is that these medications, this is the way I like to present it to people. These medications are providing hope for people who have lost hope. I've been working with clients for years struggling with obesity, and it's not necessarily for everybody calories in, calories out. We know that. There's something going on in the brain. We know that. We're hearing this. We know it. For some of us, that might work, calories in, calories out. But there's people that have struggled for years doing that, and they feel like failures, right, Rebecca? I know, and thank you, Hope, for your beautiful presentation as well. And people feel like failures. And then these medications are life-changing. And I think it's so important that we remember that everybody has their own journey. Lots of people, we all have our own medical history. It's not for everybody, right? This is why you should seek medical attention, speak to your doctor if this is right for you. But I missed your name, sir, I apologize. Dan, thank you. But Dan, I loved what you had said because that's what I tell people. Right? Like, we don't know what the future is going to hold. We didn't know years ago. Yes, we've known GLP-1s have actually been around for quite some time. But we didn't know years ago that they were going to be doing what they're doing today. More medications are in the pipeline. Medications, GLP-1s, bariatric surgery, lifestyle change, psychology, all of these things, they are all treatment options that are available for the disease of obesity today. And a combination of them seem to work best. But maybe somebody who had bariatric surgery now is on a GLP-1 because of weight recurrence. Maybe somebody on a GLP-1 with lifestyle change, it's working for them. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, but we know your health today. So I so much appreciate this conversation. And Rebecca, your story is just incredible. And thank you for being so vulnerable. And to everybody sharing their stories this evening, I think it's so important and impactful. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Dominic, there's a hand right back here. Yeah.
Right here, right?
And then, yes, right here. Right here. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I've lost 40 on Zepbound. I'm about halfway there. And I just wanted to speak to, first, Dan, I was told by my doctor, and this is true, that if you lose 40, 80 pounds and you gain it back, you've most likely lost muscle and replaced it with fat. And that's not something somebody my age can afford to do. So I do think that there is a reason not to start. I mean, I don't know if I would go that far, but I think you need to keep that in mind. If anybody in this room, although there don't seem like that many in this room, I'm reminded of the New Yorker cartoon where the coasts say or the middle says too skinny or too fat, and the coasts say too skinny. But I'm concerned about the end of the medication. I'm concerned when I hear that in Britain they're worried it's going to bankrupt, that Ozempic and GLP-1s are going to bankrupt the health system if everybody is on it for the rest of their lives. I'm also concerned when I hear people talk about people focusing on the medication alone, when it is pretty clear to me that, that wasn't what we heard in the article. And also, people don't talk about insulin alone, and I wonder if obviously there are health, like our friend online said, there are a lot of health issues. I weighed those. I was scared, but I was pre-diabetic too. We don't know. I mean, we could all be getting cancer from this, all the people. And go to TikTok if you want to hear a lot of people talk about having good experience. It's amazing. But so anyway, that's just what I wanted to share.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, to your point, thankfully we're not doing a New Yorker article, we're doing an Atlantic article. Just to put some branding on stage for a second here, although it's blank. And just to say that 1 in 8 people have tried these drugs. From what I've read in the Atlantic, So that means we don't know who's sitting to our left and our right. And we can't necessarily assess whether we're coastal or in the middle or whatever, because that's all, and it cuts across blue and red. It cuts across, I mean, when we were trying to come up with the idea of the questions we were going to ask the audience, we were thinking, is there a conservative position? Yeah. Well, thank you. That's exactly where I was going to go next. So thank you for that. I want to ask a question about judgment, because it's another through line that runs through Rebecca's piece. And again, I saw your hand, sir. We'll come to you, and then you can integrate all of your answers into one perfect statement. In fact, we're going to give you the mic right now. But I'm going to ask the question so we can get the thing going in the room. So I want to ask you a question about judgment, because we've created a space that's permissive and open enough for people to share their stories. And it's amazing. It never gets old for me to hear people taking the risk of being present. I took this drug. I had this experience. This is where I was vulnerable. But in the same time, there's a stigma about weight in our country. There's also a stigma about talking openly about our reservations about weight, or our judgments about weight, or our judgments about these drugs. And so in the spirit of that, with compassion, I want to ask you, have you judged people who are overweight? And have you judged yourself? And if so, can you speak to that? And there's a hand over here. I don't know if you want to come in next. You have the mic, so might as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I kind of thought about this piece and about the idea of judgment is the idea of, like, I would call it existential fat phobia. People talking about how, from particularly women, mostly in our society, Western society, back till those diets, have been around, growing up from the age of 5 or 6 as a woman, having to deal with this existential dread of weight, food, judgment, their whole life. And I couldn't imagine living with that, in terms of that, and how it affects whether it's just going to school, having jobs, dating, or going to the doctor's office, hearing about all the women who have had these judgments about their weight when they go into the doctor's office and not having their needs met. They just lose weight, and having to deal with the judgment that this, even if this drug is helpful, the fat phobia is not going anywhere. It's still going to be there. They're still trying to chase that dream. A diet industry that's multi-billion-dollar diet industry is going to say, whoa, it's still going to be present.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I mean, we're after complexity, so I appreciate it. Kind of complexifies the question, and I think it's for each individual. Obviously, I don't mean this in a blanket way, but is the anxiety and the misery of being overweight for many people related to the physical experience, or is it related to how they're perceived by others and how they're treated in a society that judges weight for various reasons? And I feel like that's a great question to have been brought into the room. I think there was a hand over here lit up by my question. Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Christy Jared. I'm a PhD prepared nurse. And I did a research study for my dissertation a few years back on the relationship between obesity and adverse childhood experiences. So I think one of the things that I heard in regards to about judgment is the individuals that I interviewed 14 women from around the United States, is there's a lot of self-judgment, and a lot of that seems to come from the harsh reality of people judging them. So it kind of self-perpetuates. I think that also we need to look at obesity, and this has been touched upon in this discussion, as a chronic condition, that it is a chronic condition that needs to be managed as we manage things like high blood pressure, like high cholesterol. And in those situations, we don't take people off their medications. So we have this dilemma right now where these drugs have been around for, I guess, in wide use about 5 to 10 years now, maybe longer. But we're getting to the point where we need to see, and I'm hoping that this is being explored right now, what are the next steps, right? Do we need to continue, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, the psychologist said, right? It's probably going to be a combination of these factors, but saying that, we have to end the dependence on the medications, I think this has been life-saving and life-changing for so many people. What I hope is we continue to explore the relationship between our emotional reasons why we eat also, and we also look at what is next. How can we help people sustain this life-changing weight loss that again, it not only changes how we look, but it also changes our chronic health conditions that come along with being obese.
Thank you so much.
You're
it's really
welcome.
great to have a nurse's perspective in the room. Was there someone next to you who also had a hand? Do you have your, go right ahead, yeah.
I was going to say, I think it is a lot about self-judgment. And as someone who is taking a slightly different approach to my weight loss journey and relying on a program that is concentrating on perimenopausal women and, you know, getting more protein and the whole like gamut of it, sleep, stress, how do you feel about yourself, self-confidence. But that self-judgment is intense. And we really have to concentrate on that.
Thank you so much for speaking so directly to that. I really appreciate the two of you speaking. The idea that for some, weight gain is actually the result of having been treated cruelly as children or at some point in their development. And so in some ways, it's the result of judgment and cruelty. And then the larger question of if you've internalized that cruelty or that judgment, is that voice yours or is it something that's been put upon you? And how do you break that cycle if you've been habituated over your life to sort of hear that voice in your head or to think of yourself in that way? And just taking the drug doesn't change, as was brought in, the larger societal judgments. Just taking the drugs doesn't necessarily change, I don't know, more can speak to this, the voice within. And so it's an interesting contradiction to sort of hold in the room and to acknowledge that weight is also something that is related to emotions, to trauma, to loss, to grief, to stress that was brought up in the article. And we can't lose sight of that. Those are complex things that can't necessarily be resolved by an injection. And the effects can be ameliorated, clearly, but what about those larger implications of the spiritual implications, the moral implications, the emotional implications of what you brought into the room? There's a hand over here and there's a hand in the front right here. Yeah, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a physician who treats patients with obesity. Thank you so much for the article. And I just want to say that there have been multiple clinical trials that have established that when people stop anti-obesity medications, they do regain weight on average. And we know clinically it is extremely difficult to maintain weight loss off of these medications because obesity is a disease. And so I think it's interesting hearing not everyone, but this discussion about stopping these medicines. Of course, for insurance coverage, that's definitely an issue, but there's definitely a lot of patients who want to stop these medicines long term, and I'm wondering if it is because of this maybe self-stigma or bias that they should not need to take these medications.
Thank you and it's great to hear from another physician in the room who works in the field. Absolutely. Unique, you wanted to speak again? Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. You've turned Unique into our best customer, Dominic, but it's okay, it's fine.
Okay, so I feel like I'm a social worker, everyone. So I'm a doctoral social worker and I'm a master's level social worker. So I feel like as a social worker, you have to move around a lot. And when I was my heaviest, I would find myself needing a lot of breaks. So like if I had to go on a site visit, I would find myself delegating. If I had to go in the field when I was my heaviest weight, I would find myself like, oh, I don't want to get out the bed. I think it's a lot of like me internalizing what does it mean to be heavier, my inability to kind of move around, my inability to show up. And I've been around a lot of people in my community that didn't necessarily ate a lot of sugar, didn't necessarily exercise, didn't move around. Now they're in their 60s and their 70s and they're struggling. So when I think about weight loss, when I think about taking care of your body, I don't judge people for how they show up, because everyone can show up in a way that makes the most sense for them. But I think about like living a life where you can experience the most out of it. I think about living a life where you're able to achieve and do what makes the most sense for you. And when I'm my heaviest, like I can't, like it, I mean, I can, but I don't, I would say, is like I can't like walk 20 blocks. I can't walk 3 miles to work. I don't want to bicycle and do all these things. So when I think about my relationship to obesity or what does it mean to be heavy, I judge myself because I feel inadequate, like I can't do my job and what's expected of me.
Thank you so much, Unique. Did you want to speak to? Yeah, we'll go right next to you. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Brandon. Full disclosure, I'm Rebecca's husband, but I wanted I wanted to provide a perspective on what happened to the other half of that cheeseburger that didn't get eaten. And what's been interesting about this journey with Rebecca is that seeing the snap of where she just would not want to eat anymore. And when the Manjaro kicked in and she would be going through, and we have a lifelong relationship of eating. Going out to eat is one of our favorite things to ever do. And to see that just kind of go away, my being raised to not waste food, my desire to eat, the fact that I like to overeat. Overeating is fun. It's terrible, but it's fun. And so I wound up in the early times of this picking up what was left over. And sometimes it was healthy food. It wasn't always like fast food. But that gets to the moral failing issue of it. Was I failing morally? Was I being a glutton? Was I being weak? Whereas this drug was allowing my wife to be able to turn that part of her brain off, and it just acted in an instant. And I think it does get at the idea that we often judge people who struggle with their ability to eat as weak people, as moral failing, when there just is clearly so much more going on there.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I'm gonna ask a question. I'm gonna come right here in 1 second. Just planting my feet. Again, this is the first time, maybe the last time I'll get to ask these questions, and it's just a wild guess, but going just a little bit deeper into this question of judgment, and where does it come from? I mean, I think about this too, like, what's that? Mothers is one place, yeah. Fathers, someone else says, yeah. Society, yes, absolutely. This is the audience participation part of the conversation tonight. Just yell out all the ways it comes from. Our puritanical heritage as a country, you know, this moral part that you brought up. Religion, you know, it comes from a lot of places. And there you go. The gluttony is a sin, right? Yes, in a Christian context, but in other religions as well. People, this is what I believe, the wisdom of the audience. There's wisdom in every audience. Fashion. This is the question. Drilling down a little bit further on this question of judgment. Is weight a choice? I'm going to come to you because you had your hand up. Maybe there's someone over here. I'm going to give you the. I promised him I'd come to him and I'll come back over there.
Thank you. My name is Bob Ekorandi. I'm a transplant surgeon and obesity medicine specialist at NYU Langone, where I help people lose weight who are dealing with end-stage organ disease, oftentimes as a complication of their obesity. And I'm a very data-driven guy, and there's a really nice study that came out a number of years ago from the Harvard Implicit Bias Study that showed over time it was measuring people's implicit biases towards different marginalized groups. And over time as a society, it looked like we were on track to improve our implicit biases against racial minorities, sexual minorities, other various groups. But the one group that we just do not have any sort of improvement on that front is people with obesity, despite the fact that obesity is only on the rise. And so I think that is really, really important point, that it is something that is so deeply ingrained in our society. The other thing that I think is really, it's not data, it's an anecdote, but I think is so helpful is hearing stories like today, people talking openly and candidly about their struggles and about using these medications. And so I think the best example, aside from what we heard tonight, is Oprah Winfrey, right? This is someone who has, you cannot deny her drive, her ambition, her intelligence, her work ethic, who has all of the resources in the world to have every meal prepared perfectly, right? To have trainers 24 hours a day if she so desired, and yet still had this very public struggle with weight loss and weight gain. And so I think it really shows that this is not it's a nice illustration that this is not just an issue of lack of willpower. I think that's very important to point out. This is a disease.
Thank you so much. We'll go over here, but I appreciate hearing a transplant doctor say this is a disease. It's a powerful thing. To go to next, to my question of is this a choice, which was very pointed, but I appreciate the data and the anecdotal answer as well. Yes, over in the back.
You asked us if it was a choice.
Yeah.
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to come back to that.
Okay.
I grew up with an obese uncle. Back in the day, choice of words, everybody used one word, and it was usually fat. We've become politically correct, so now we have different terms for it. Choice, yes. So here was my choice. I never had to struggle with the weight, but when I looked at my uncle, it hurt because, as I would tell my husband, I could look down the block and see how he walked and knew it was him because of his weight. And it hurt me. And because of him, I always made a conscious choice to work on staying a certain size, but only as I got older. It didn't matter when I was younger. As I got older, it did, because you get older and your body just wants to do what it wants to do.
Ain't the truth.
Yeah. The choice that you said. So years ago, there was a movie called Fat Girls. I am sure people know what it is. And I always said that movie brought in the acceptance of size. Nowadays, there are women particularly making the choice to not do anything about their size. They're saying, accept me as I am. But women in particular, not men, we struggle because we are fighting so many different things. Because if you're not a size 2, when you got married, you were a size 1. So when you grow older and you become a size 5, what happens? So the eyes start turning. So men don't see us the same way, and therefore it makes women look at themselves a different way. It's a struggle, that psychological thing, that's real. Because, oh, my boyfriend doesn't want me because I gained 10 pounds. Oh, my husband is looking at somebody else because when I got married, I was 110 and now I'm 160. That's a real thing. So is it a choice? I'm going to say it's a choice. Then what you do with the choice, as far as the medication, is the exercise. A lot of times for women, again, it's not because that's what they want to do. They do it because they feel they have to do it, because they have to keep something or someone, or I have to keep my head together because I have to look a certain way, because if I don't look a certain way, it's not because I don't feel okay, or maybe I don't feel okay, but if I don't look this way, that's going to change my life in some way.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that answer. I appreciate you bringing that into the room. If I hear you, just distilling briefly, you say it's a choice, but maybe it's a choice that people are being forced to make by other people, and that the choice could be a medication, that choice could be all kinds of things, but it's about how we're perceived, and maybe people shouldn't be put in a position where they have to make a choice when it's not about a medical issue. I appreciate you bringing your uncle into the room, because clearly that was a medical issue, not seeing him walk down the street. And so here we can hold the complexity and even the somewhat contradictory nature of our own relationship to the answer to this question, which is an unfair question. Is it a choice? I'll just note that right now, but go right ahead. Yeah.
Hi. Oh, hello. Oh, it's working. And I'll answer your piece on choice, but I think one thing that's interesting that hasn't really been brought up yet is social media and how that impact is, I think, impacting the younger generations we're seeing. So I know on TikTok and growing up on social media, I've seen a rise on influencers who may be slightly overweight, but they are starting to take this drug and really broadcasting it to their audiences, and those audiences are particularly younger. And what we're seeing is they're sensationalizing this drug in a way and talking about how they feel so good, they look so good. I know one influencer has called herself the Ozempic skeleton. And so how are we managing these younger generations that are growing up in this era of not kind of thinking that this is the way out for them or a healthy lifestyle intervention if they may not need it. I know for myself, what I find myself doing now is if I eat late at night or if I binge eat after dinner or skip a meal or skip a workout, now I kind of naturally am thinking to myself like, oh, well, there is an easier way out for me. Like I can then talk to my doctor if I need to go on Ozempic. And what I worry about is just, are these younger generations going to grow up in this and then abandon healthy lifestyles just because they think that there is this option for them?
It's a really good question to bring into the room. I appreciate that. And it's a perfect segue to this next question I want to ask you as an audience. And I'm glad we've gotten to this place where, and I was talking to one of the actresses. I won't obviously name the actress in our company. There are over 200, so you can't guess who it was. But she said she feels that Ozempic thin is the new heroin chic. And then what's so frustrating as an actor in the business is that we'd graduated from that for a period. And now it's actually expected that people who are having their images put on screens and in media to look a certain way, that's the result of this particular type of drug. And I appreciate you saying, how is that refracted through social media? And what does that say to young people? So here's the complexity. We're getting even more complicated here. So Ozempic and other GLP-1 drugs, I mean, for some, they're an absolute miracle. Totally game-changing. Life-changing. For some who are diabetic, it pulls them back from the brink. For some who are overweight, it allows them to have healthier lifestyles again. For a large number of people, 30% maybe, it doesn't work. Some people are allergic. Some people have the response that Glenn had from Zoom. And by the way, you on Zoom, if anyone else wants to raise their hand, I just want to encourage you. We could bring another person into the room. We love hearing from people across the country and the world. It's a miracle. It's sometimes doesn't work. It's a moral conundrum for some people. Some people say it's an easy fix to a larger societal problem. Doesn't treat the whole problem, but just one issue. There's a lot of complex feelings in this room about Ozempic, in every room, and GLP-1 drugs. So here I'm going to plant my feet and I'm going to ask the question, so what do you think of these GLP-1 drugs? And it's not just a yes or no or thumbs up. I see hands. Yeah, someone has a microphone. Yeah, over here. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Lydia Shestapalova. I am trying to collect my thoughts. There are many. I am a type 1 diabetic from a very young age. So I am in recovery from an eating disorder, a little known one called diabulimia, when you restrict your insulin to the degree that your body eats itself. And I've noticed that many of the comments are about people's individual issues, and as though it's an individual problem. And I just want to bring up some industrial issues. The first is that the food industry is out to kill us. There is sugar added to juice, right, to tomato sauce. So as a society, we are sick with disordered eating. And it's kind of from birth. If we go, it is unbelievably difficult and almost impossible for people to maintain a healthy lifestyle, even if they choose that, even if they can afford that, even if they don't live in a food desert like so many of our people do. So I think that we need, as a society, to bring that to bear, because we can continue taking drugs on an individual level, and medical interventions are so complicated, and I know I can't stop taking the meds I'm on. It's not something that we can judge each other for, but it's also, we need to get to the root of the issues. And the industrial scale is outrageous. And another industry is the healthcare industry, our for-profit healthcare industry. And these drugs are, as people have mentioned, incredibly expensive. That is, it's just an unbelievable, like, I don't even have the word for how stuck it should make all of us feel, or it does make us feel. We just don't talk about it or don't do enough to stop it. I'm gonna leave it there because
Thank
now
you.
I'm
really
getting
appreciate it.
incoherent.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate, I mean, first of all, the perspective that you brought into the room is so powerful. The two things you referenced, the industrial scale of our food industry and for-profit healthcare industry, complicate the conversation in really powerful and important ways, and it was a missing from the conversation so far. You hinted at, and I just want to say out loud because you said it, these drugs are expensive. They're not necessarily covered by insurance. They're not covered forever. Even Rebecca mentioned, a journalist, someone who works, may not be able to afford it beyond a certain period of time. There are people in this room who, even if they wanted it, wouldn't have access to it, and certainly from communities where that's the case. So, but that has the same could be said for food, quality food. The same could be said for nutritious, unchemically altered, unprocessed food. And so this is a larger problem, and even if it does work, and even if it is a miracle for an individual, we collectively have a responsibility, I hear you saying, to be looking at the much larger societal and industrial issues that we're facing. So thank you so much. Yeah, in the center right here.
I just want to thank Rebecca for just being so open about this article. And I want to talk a little bit about the judgment aspect. You know, when you're a larger size, you know, you have self-judgment. And society tells people, oh, look at you, you're obese, you're fat, you should go to the gym and work out. When the larger people go to the gym, they get judged. Oh, nobody wants to work out. Like, oh, they're sweating all over the machines. You know, I used to work out with a trainer in a small gym, and it specialized. There was another trainer there who worked with people who were very obese because it was a small gym and they didn't want to have the eyes of the world judging them as they were doing the thing that the world was telling them to do, to not be obese. And even at a larger size, now I have two full disclosures. One, I'm on Ozempic. Two, I was the first editor who assigned Becky the diet story, so.
Wow. Bury the lead.
Full circle.
Yeah.
When I was a larger size, you know, you go and you're judging yourself and you're like, oh, I let myself go. I shouldn't have done this. You go into the grocery store and you see somebody who's bigger and you have a momentary, like, I feel a little bit better, right? That's judgment. At least I'm not her. At least I'm not that guy. That guy's really big. I'm like, you know, I'm not as big as that guy. You know, like, we need to get away from that. And that's part of a weight loss journey, is to repair your relationship with food, but you also need to repair your relationship with the judgment on others. And the other thing I was gonna say, and why I really commend Rebecca for being upfront on her Facebook post where she was like, I'm on Manjaro, because I have seen people who maybe have never really struggled with their weight, but they're always judging people who are overweight. And then when they find out that somebody has lost weight on a drug, well, you cheated. It's not real weight loss. Oh yeah, sure, congratulations, you look good now, but you didn't do it in the right way. So I'm still judging you because you just put in the cheat code and it's unearned, when we all know it's earned through failed diets. It's earned through tears when you can't fit those jeans, when you have to go up a size, when you can see family members at a family reunion looking at you like, that it's earned. and the idea that people will sit in judgment because, well, you lost weight on a drug. No. Oh, you're fat and you're at the gym. No. Oh, you're a bigger size and you're at the grocery store and like, oh, look at you buying healthy. Oh, that's cute. You're getting lettuce and stuff. But we all know you probably have a bunch of snacks at home. Like all of that BS, like we need to stop doing that to each other so we can stop doing it to ourselves.
Wow, thank you so much. It's so powerful. I want to go to Zoom really quickly. I know we're at the end of the time that we said we'd be with you, but we had a few people on Zoom who really wanted to talk, and just out of deference to them. But just to say, like, there are no more credible messengers than people who've worked in the industry of women's magazines, coming forward and sharing those perspectives and stories, that the shame doesn't end, the shaming doesn't end with the change in weight or the decision to exercise, that we live in this culture of perpetual fat shaming, of obesity shaming, of gaslighting that you describe. And I appreciate you bringing it into the room and speaking to it. Julie, you've been waiting for, Michelle, you've been waiting for some time on Zoom. We only have a few minutes, but what did you want to speak to tonight, Michelle?
Thank you so much. I'm actually an eating disorder specialist, a psychotherapist who works with these issues all the time, every day in my office in New York City. And I'm really struck by so many things. Has anyone ever really worked at what is truly happening emotionally for them? Why are they reaching for the food? It's not just a quick fix with taking a drug. And I'm glad that it's helping some people, but there are many people getting sick from it. And that's very concerning to me and my eating disorder community, all the professionals. I think many people do struggle with trauma from early childhood, and they use food as an elixir. Just we've talked about addiction. It is about what are you really hungry for? It's really about the feelings and not about the food. And I think that it's worth exploring rather than us all looking in a society for quick fixes. And also, I think our society is sick because we have this diet culture that one has to look a certain way, or we're not good enough. We're not acceptable enough. And I think that it's really important to look at all these other factors. And I was struck by the woman who talked about looking good for men. That's also giving into a misogynistic society that, oh, we're not good enough unless we're skinny enough. And I can't tell you the sadness, the trauma that so many women experience, that they're willing to almost die, whether it's they're overweight and then they become anorexic and they're in a hospital, or they're every day, can I eat this? Should I eat this? Well, is it okay? So I really think it's really important to think about some of these other issues which you have also brought up. Yeah. And not just take it, I'm going to pop a pill, because at the end of the day, you're still left with yourself. And so I really also want to thank Rebecca for being so vulnerable and so open. And, so many other people have shared their stories. And, we need to consider all these factors. And
so
really,
much, Michelle.
yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I think it's so powerful having the perspective of someone who specializes in eating disorders and people who have struggled with eating disorders speaking in this larger conversation about weight and stigma and these drugs. It seems like a really powerful and important lens through which to see the conversation. Thank you for your comments. Julie,
thank you so much.
Julie, you're next, and then we'll go to Joyce last. But Julie, what did you want to speak to tonight?
Yes, hi. Well, I mean, all of these factors are a tremendous problem. I mean, I was overweight since being a small child. And the author said she wouldn't go far as getting bariatric surgeries. Well, I've had two. So, and now I'm on Wegovy for maybe 6 months, and I've lost about 40 pounds, which is pretty good. But nothing ever seems to be the real answer, because you can't be on this for life. And that's how it feels right now. It feels like I would have to be on this for life just to be able to maintain this weight, which is not an ideal weight either, but it's much improved. So I'm not sure where to go from here. No matter what you try, it's just not the answer, or it doesn't seem to really be the answer. And I'm afraid these drugs may be some of the same.
Thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate your hard-earned perspective, and I bringing it into the room. Just in the sake of time, I'm going to go to our last Zoom person. That's Joyce. Joyce, thanks for your patience. Joyce, what did you want to speak to tonight?
I have to say that I really benefited from this whole discussion to appreciate the way that this drug that I've been sneering about has encouraged people. But I also basically felt very sad because there's something like a secret organization or whatever that friends of mine belong to that's free, that's for life, that doesn't involve drugs, but addresses the things that people have talked about. There's the stigma of being overweight, but then there's the suffering of people who are underweight and really sick. So the idea that the AA Anonymous thing can address disordered eating seems to be a secret, and that makes me really sad. That's what I have to say.
Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing your perspective into the room. I also didn't want to gloss Jamie, last but not least, on the Zoom. We're all here waiting to hear what you have to say tonight as our last Zoom participant.
Can you hear me okay?
We sure can, Jamie.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for this captivating discussion. I'm also a psychotherapist, and I'm at the other side of the world. I live and work in Laramie, Wyoming, and I believe that we're number 2 in terms of obesity, which is absolutely ridiculous because we have mountains, we have mountain climbing, skiing, ice skating. The kids learn all this stuff when they're just, very young. But I think, and I practice Jungian psychotherapy. So years ago, there was a book that came out called Fat is a Feminist Issue. And I think it truly is, because it's, even though it can be in men as well, because that's what I see in dreams and so forth. Dr. Marion Woodman, I don't know if you know who she is. She wrote a book called The Owl is a Baker's Daughter, and she addresses size, and she's talking about the denial of the feminine in terms of the shape of our bodies. If our bodies get too big, it doesn't look like a feminine body. If they get too small, it doesn't look like a feminine body. So I think we're at the end, sort of at the end of the patriarchy, although I think we're having one massive return to the patriarchy, as we can see in our culture. So it's not your fault. It's not your fault, anybody. It really isn't. We are in a cultural matrix that is very hard to get out of. And it has to do with the denial of the feminine. And that means women. That means male with a feminine side. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Thanks for joining us from Wyoming. Really appreciate it. Just coming back to the room for a second, you've been waiting for some time. We're gonna go here, and then maybe there's one last person who has something burning with them to say, or maybe not someone who's spoken so far. You're my best customer, well, and Unique is my other best customer up in the front. But someone who someone in the back right there. We'll go to no pressure to sum everything up into one perfect statement, but you're gonna have the last word of this conversation, or maybe the last story, depending on what you say. But we're gonna go here first. Go ahead, please.
I'm going to be an outlier. My name is Angela. I've never had a problem with food. I don't think about it. But the fact of the matter is that I find fat women, I'm heterosexual, but I find fat women to be beautiful. When you see a fat woman, I'm not going to say obese, when you see a very chubby woman, okay, with the makeup on, I just can't understand how a man just doesn't love that. And another thing is that many people who lose weight feel as though they've lost their identity. They've been chubby all of their lives, and now suddenly they're not, and it seems as they can't reconcile that they're the same person. But I have to say that you know, it may just be, there may be a lot of people like me. Many women like to be chubby, fat, etc. They like to eat. Their husbands like them. Their boyfriends like them. So, you know, don't think that everyone who is heavy is ostracized from society.
Thank you for your perspective, and I appreciate what you said. Also, it's great to have so many different perspectives in the room. I hear a connection between what you just said and what was said by some of the other women who've spoken in the last 10 minutes about misogyny, patriarchy, imposed standards of beauty, what is beautiful. And that's an important thing to have brought into the room, and I appreciate you coming from your perspective, saying, I find this to be beautiful. And that's powerful and not to be underestimated.
Brian, can we do 30 seconds?
We'll do 30 seconds and then last word back
Thank
there.
you
One
so
second,
much.
yeah, go ahead.
Super quick.
Yeah.
I just want to say one last thing. It really comes down to the language that we're using.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say this earlier, that words matter. And if we're going to call these weight loss medications and focus on weight loss, then we're missing the point. And then people are on the, like the ladies that were in the back that left already, we're missing the point in terms of people on TikTok and influencers going these medications. The right people that these are medications made for, indicated for, have a disease called obesity. So if we call these anti-obesity medications GLP-1s, we are going to have a better understanding of this, and we will drop some of the shame and stigma that is around people going on the medications. Mm-hmm. We can't be calling them weight loss drugs, because then we're feeding into this stigma that's already existing, and we are part of the problem. So just please be mindful of the language you're using when you're talking about these medications, anti-obesity medications, anti-diabetes medications, or GLP-1s. Thank you.
Thank you for the concise 30 seconds. I wish we had another hour and a half, because I want to talk about the disease model a little bit more and unpack that, because it's such a complicated thing to be bringing into the room. We're not after simplicity, we're after complication, and we've explored this issue in a lot of different ways, and there's some things that have been said in the room that resonate and align. There's some things that have been totally on either side of the equation. That's okay. We can sit here and we can hold space and acknowledge those contradictions, because there's no simple answer in this conversation. But so we didn't come here to tie a bow in it to say, now we've checked the box, we've had this conversation, we're going to leave and go off to our lives. We came to complicate it, and hopefully we'll continue thinking about this conversation and this amazing performance for days, weeks, months ahead. So no pressure to sum everything up into one perfect statement or tell one story that'll leave us thinking for days and weeks ahead, but you're going to have the last word of our conversation tonight.
Peace, everyone. My name is Samaya. In the midst of everybody having their different experiences and perspectives, I do want to acknowledge that I appreciate everything that everyone has said. It has made me feel not alone in my own journey with food. The young lady, she had left already, but I am a part of the younger generation. I'm 21 years old, and I battle with disordered eating. And hearing everybody share these perspectives and experiences that people go through is very encouraging to know that I'm not alone, and that I'm not crazy, and that like there's not something wrong with me, but that this is actually something that is impacting a lot of people. And I wanted to say thank you all for sharing, and I appreciate it.
It's a beautiful last word. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's a great place not to end the conversation, but just to pause. We went 15 minutes over, but I wanted to bring as many people into the dialogue as we could. I appreciate your forbearance and your patience. There are lots more, hundreds more on Zoom watching and tuning in from all over the world. If we had one message to deliver to you by way of Rebecca's article and by way of Hope's performance and by way of this discussion we've started but by no means finished, you're not alone in this room, as evidenced by this conversation we've started. If you related to anything that's been said, you're not alone across the country and the world, having heard from Wyoming and St. Louis and other parts of the country, Texas, I believe, as well. Most critically, you are not alone across time. We've been struggling with these issues for millennia. I think the last 150 years with the industrialization of agriculture and processed food, as was brought into the room, and now pharmaceuticals, we're in a new chapter, and it's just unfolding. And part of this conversation that was inspiring to me is that we could hold space to talk about, like, what does it mean to have started a journey but not know where it's going to end? And that's sort of where it feels like right now. I mean, here's this medicine that was developed from an enzyme in a Gila monster's stomach that allowed the lizard not to eat more than a few meals a year when it needed to. that now has vast implications for obesity, for diabetes, for potentially addiction, for potentially Alzheimer's, and yet it also has vast implications for the society in which we live, that if we don't address the underlying problems that we've been talking about, we might find ourselves in an even worse situation collectively, even if individually we've healed and found the way forward. So I appreciate that we held space for the complexity of that. You know, the motto at the end of every Theater of War Productions event is simply this. I asked someone, why do you think the writer wrote the text? I presume this would work for Rebecca's piece as well. And someone stood up after an early performance and said, I think they wrote it to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. And I hope we did a little of both, where everyone here and on Zoom tonight, comfort that we can come together across really disparate experiences and perspectives, comfort we can hold space for contradiction and complexity, and afflicted by the fact that we're on a journey and we don't know where it's going. And we've named some larger issues that we have to address, and we've acknowledged some of the miracles that have already happened in this room for a lot of the people who spoke, and those aren't necessarily at odds with each other. It's just that we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard as a culture and address the implications that these miraculous drugs are raising in the room. So I'm grateful for all the collective intelligence that was here tonight. Before closing out, I just want to thank Rebecca Johns one more time for her amazing article. I'm going to thank Hope Davis for her performance of Rebecca's article. And then just really quickly, I'm going to thank The Atlantic, Anna Bross and Sammy Sontag, WNYC, Emily Botine, Jason Saul, Ryan Wild, and the amazing technical team here at the Greene Space, and Theater of War production staff, Marjolaine Goldsmith, Dominic DuPont, and Adam Isco, and the Laurie M. Tisch Illumination Fund for underwriting this series and making it all possible. Thank you all so much. The next installment of this series will take place here at the Greene Space. For those of you watching on Zoom, here at the Greene Space on April 9, it'll be an article from ProPublica called I Don't Want to Die, about the insurance industry, ghost networks, and the challenges many Americans face in accessing mental health when they need it the most, mental health care. And we've already attached Oscar Isaac, the actor, to be one of the performers that night. And we'll be announcing this in the next week, so you can sign up and come back either on Zoom or in person and be part of this conversation. Again, the recorded 1-hour version of this radio program that we recorded collectively tonight will air on WNYC in about a week. Look out for it. We'll send you the notice when it does air. We'll post the archived audio as well, so you can share it with friends. It's been an absolute delight being with you all tonight. Thank you all so much for your attention, for your consciousness, for your wisdom. We'll hope to see you again very soon. Be well. Good night.